Happy Saturday. Welcome to another riveting episode of how to file a formal complaint. We have been talking over the last few days about your right, what you're entitled to as a member, what I am as a member of the public, when it comes to observing the conduct of our elected council and the standard that they are expected to follow and adhere to. This is the current Municipality of St. Stephen bylaw 0423, and a bylaw establishing a code of conduct for members of council of the Municipal District of St. Stephen. There is a new one, an updated, amended version of this that will repeal this and institute the new one that will be adopted, I would imagine, over the next couple of meetings. A bylaw needs 3 readings according to the Local Governance Act to be passed. The purpose of those 3 readings is to give everyone a chance to read it and to make updates and to amend it if necessary. Now, to catch you up, the Local Governance Commission did flag that it seems all municipalities are accidentally running afoul of the requirement that public complaints be dealt with in open council sessions. We do see that when I compare the old bylaw here with the new one that's up on my computer screen here that's being passed. There are slight differences. So the new bylaw that's being passed, if you go to the main Municipality of St. Stephen bylaw page, you will see it right there. I've said a lot of bylaws are really hard to find there. There's no indexing. If you go to the town of St. Andrews, for example, they have all their bylaws just indexed right there, and you can kind of browse through them and click on them and download them. St. Stephen, you're met with a message that says email or telephone the clerk, which of course in our day and age is not exactly the most user-friendly experience. I'm sure it's wonderful that the clerk will be very helpful, etc. But if you want to just get things at your fingertips, the municipality doesn't make that hugely available. I'd love to see that change. So this is 0126. And when you specifically go to the section about how to conduct formal complaints, the procedure for that, there are a couple of differences. And so I want to kind of talk to you about what the procedure is. We talked about what's happening in St. John. There is a formal complaint procedure rolling out there. And a few nights ago in Eastern Charlotte, there is a formal complaint process rolling out there. So we do see this happen. Touch wood. This will not happen to me too often as your mayor, but any member of the public is able to lodge a formal complaint, or members of not just the public, of also counselors or that kind of thing as well. Anybody really. And there is a proper procedure to doing that, and that is your right. But it has to be in violation. The member in question has to have violated a specific bylaw. Now, I am going to start getting into more of what the code of conduct entails, and I'll probably be going off the new one. But today, I just want to continue talking about that formal complaint process because it does vary from municipality to municipality. And I won't bore you with comparing this one with Eastern Charlotte or St. John or St. Andrews, which I actually couldn't find, incidentally. And I say I won't bore you, but if you're still watching this, I doubt you would get bored by this stuff. You seem to be strangely wired, like myself, absolutely curious and fascinated by these processes. So kudos to you. But when you, picking up to where we were a couple of days ago, when you file a formal complaint, you need to fill out Schedule B here, right? And that meets all the stipulations that are laid out. And every municipality has its formal complaint process, but that is actually laid out. Exactly what this bylaw needs to have is laid out in the Local Governance Act of New Brunswick already. So it's very clear there. But all these things that the complainant needs to do are actually fulfilled when they fill out Schedule B. What happens next is the clerk acknowledges receipt of it, because at the end, you're going to be mailing this to the clerk of St. Stephen, Municipality of District of St. Stephen. The clerk reaches back out to the complainant, acknowledges receipt, forwards the complaint package, all of the relevant information that was mailed in by the complainant, to the mayor and or the deputy mayor. and they will make their assessment from there. So it says the clerk will acknowledge receipt, provide the mayor or deputy mayor a formal complaint for processing. The updated bylaw now says it will be also forwarded to council, the member of council, that the complaint was made about. So it looks like in the past, this stuff could be happening without the member of council against whom the complaint was lodged, without even knowing it. Now the member of council has a right to know that a complaint has been filed. This is right here in the new stipulation, formal complaint process right here. Upon receipt, the clerk will provide notice of the complaint to the member name. So that's new 11.1.0, 1110, which wasn't here before in the old one. So what happens next then is the mayor, and I won't go through the criteria, but the mayor, and of course, if it's against the mayor, then the deputy mayor takes over. But they make an assessment as to whether or not, first, that they are in a position to even judge if this complaint is something that they can decide upon. So, for example, there's a few stipulations. If it's against the member, then the member can't decide. If it's against the mayor can't decide. Also, there's some kind of statute of limitation stuff, 12 months, if it's older than a year, et cetera, et cetera. But I won't get into that. So first, the mayor decides whether or not they can assess this. If they can't, they pass it to the deputy mayor. They decide if they're in a position to assess it. And if they are, they can request more information if Schedule B was not sufficient, or they deemed that they need more information. And then they will decide whether to deem the complaint as valid. So now it's kind of like choose your own adventure, or the mayor chooses your adventure for you. The complaint is either valid, and they say, oh yeah, no, there is something here, there's a breach of conduct, or it is invalid. And there's more reasons here for why it might be invalid. But when they make that determination, here's what's interesting and what surprised me, I think, is that it's not like it then just gets rushed off to council to make a decision. What happens next is if the complainant, if the mayor agrees that it should be investigated, they will advise the complainant in writing. If it shouldn't be investigated, they'll advise the complainant in writing. This is in 11.1.4. And then so again, choose your own adventure. Let's say the mayor says there's nothing here, there's nothing to see here, we don't believe there's a breach. They need to tell the complainant in writing. And then the complainant can actually appeal that decision with the clerk, and then the clerk places it on and the old version of the bylaw said a closed council meeting. The new one, the updated, well, now it needs to be open. So that's what happens if the mayor says there's nothing to see here, we're going to close it. No, your complaint is not valid. There can be an appeal to the entire council to determine whether or not the complaint moves forward. But this is the part that surprised me. If the mayor immediately says, no, this does look like there's something here, there's smoke, there might be fire, what happens next is that's not just forwarded off to council. This is where a third-party investigator is brought in. So every formal complaint is investigated, is explored further by an impartial third party. There are stipulations on everything that investigator then needs to do, and there's a 90-day timeline for that, which can be extended under extenuating circumstances. And then the clerk takes the report. That ends with a full comprehensive report by this third party. It's a confidential report to council. And this is where the confidentiality piece is interesting, because I was looking at 68.1. I do have questions. I'm not the mayor yet. And I am wondering about it's confidential under what part of the Local Governance Act 68, as I read to you a few days ago. But then the clerk places the matter on a closed meeting of council. And I did look, and the new one still has that it's a closed meeting of council. And that's where the confidential report is presented. So it's not open to council, at least the investigator's confidential report of the misconduct complaint filing. That goes to a closed council session. The council will then, there's a whole bunch of stipulations about what the consequence might be, but then this is really important. Council, and there's new things here. This is the old one. It says council while acting in committee, which I've explained committees before. Suddenly you have this committee showing up in the current bylaw. That's being amended here. There's no committee. What happens is, I just want to make sure I get this right for you. Council in closed session considers the confidential report from the investigator. And I was confused by this language, actually. This bylaw is still in reading, and I would recommend to council to iron this out a bit. Their recommendation, the council's recommendation with respect to whether a sanction should be imposed to resolve the matter, will be forwarded to council for a decision. So that seems weird, like the council is forwarding it to council, but then the next one maybe makes it clear. Council will, at its next regular meeting, after receiving the investigator's report, this is 11.24, they will vote whether the mayor breached the member, sorry, mayor, Freudian slip, the member breached the bylaw, and where the breach is found, they will vote on corrective action. So when they take the report, then they decide if there is a breach, but then again, they're not deciding whether or not the breach needs to be decided upon. So this is very interesting, and I think this is because the confidential report can be in a closed session, but then it does need to eventually come to light to the public in that open session. So when you see what was happening in Eastern Charlotte, as I mentioned the last couple of days, that was brought to council in the regular meeting, but I wonder if all of this, and it depends, you can pull up there, like I said, I'm not going to pull up Eastern Charlotte, that's because we're talking about the Municipal District of St. Stephen here, but there would be a process like this where when it finally reaches open council meeting, there may have already been an investigation, and council is now voting on whether or not the breach should be judged and whether there should be corrective action. The member named shall not participate in a vote. So again, we saw the Eastern Charlotte mayor leave the room when this was discussed because of course that's a conflict of interest, voting for yourself and saying, I did nothing wrong. And then the member who is the subject of an investigation will be afforded procedural fairness, and they can actually respond to the allegation before council, before the council decides on a sanction, and the sanctions are all listed. It could be everything from apology to suspension of pay, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the conclusion of the complaint process. It's really important for you to know, and for council to know, if you're thinking of running, that you always have this avenue at your disposal if you think that a council member, mayor, deputy mayor, did not abide by the code of conduct. And really, it is a very high bar. You should know that. And when you are going to the polls, I want you to think about, when you're voting for someone, is this a member of the public right now, before somebody becomes a councillor? If you're re-electing a councillor or the mayor, that's up to you. But if it's someone who has not served in public office yet, is this someone who you're voting for who generally abides by this? Now, of course, as a member of the public, you are only held to general ethical good behavior as a human being. But when you become a council, when you become a member of council, you are literally signing up to hold a higher standard of conduct. And as a member of public, it's important for you to know that you're voting for somebody with a really high level of integrity. And I want to start going over these tomorrow. But also, someone is not just going to immediately change their ways and become this kind of person, I don't believe, when they're voted into office. Is this someone who generally conducts themselves out in the world in this way? In what way? Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. All right, friends, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I'll be back here Sunday. BuildUpStStephen.ca, that's where I list out my priorities, my commitments, the action plan, how I want to be open and transparent, leading a council that you can trust, building a home that we are proud of, so that we can be sharing an open process that we all understand. And, there's many more parts of this to come. What are we at, 70 plus days still till the election? That's why sometimes we get into the weeds, but sometimes I am going to get into priorities and commitments coming up soon. But I want you to understand the code of conduct and the level that people are held to when they represent you. And so we'll get more into that tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.